What happens when heaven's most trusted guardians break the one sacred rule, the inviolable covenant they were meant to uphold? What occurs when immortal, powerful angels abandon their eternal posts, not for grand conquest or power, but simply for the fleeting, beautiful tragedy of love? The cosmic answer to that question would tear the fabric of reality, permanently reshape the world forever, and unleash a judgment so absolute, so overwhelmingly severe, that even the ancient mountains themselves would tremble and weep. Before we journey deeper into this profound, hidden truth, take a second to like this video and subscribe to Bible Breakdown Hub. Every gesture of support helps us decode and bring you more of these essential biblical truths, deepening your grasp of Scripture's most powerful, yet often untold, stories. Long before the floodwaters rose to cleanse the ruined world, back when creation still carried the pristine fragrance of Eden, and the earth was new, God's eyes watched over humanity with tender, protective care. The first people were newly formed, innocent, and inherently vulnerable to the darkness lurking just beyond the light. Recognizing this, the Creator made a monumental decision. He would dispatch a legion of protectors, mighty angelic beings who would descend and stand guard over His precious, fledgling children. 200 angels received this sacred, solemn assignment. They were known across the celestial realms as the Watchers, the chosen, tireless guardians of heaven's will on earth. God's instructions were utterly crystal clear, an inviolable boundary set for eternity. "Go down to the world I have created," He commanded them. "Keep watch over it. Do not let the seed of evil take root. Guide them quietly, subtly, from a distance. Observe everything the mortals do, but never, under any circumstance, cross the invisible line and enter their world." The Watchers immediately grasped the immense weight of this supreme command. They were wholly determined and stood ready to serve, filled with the purity of divine purpose. The moment arrived when heaven's massive gates opened wide, and these mighty, radiant beings began their staggering journey downward, cutting a path through the dense cloud cover toward the vibrant, green earth below. Leading the host was Samjaza, a figure of serene calm, unshakable strength, and undisputed dignity. Walking alongside him was Azel, whose brilliant, analytical mind never stopped questioning the nature of existence. Even within heaven's perfect, tranquil peace, Azel had always studied creation with an intense, burning curiosity, always wanting to discover what profound secrets lay hidden beneath the surface of the physical world. They landed together on Mount Hermon's highest, windswept peak, a place where the dazzling stars felt almost within reach. This remote summit was their assigned position, close enough to clearly see everything happening in the valleys below, yet far enough to remain separate, detached, and untainted, exactly as God had commanded. Samjaza gazed with solemnity at his 200 fellow angels gathered around him. "Brothers," he began, "we have been entrusted with the heaviest task, watching over humanity, a species still finding its way. But this world stretches far and wide, and the human heart is still new and untested. I tell you now, if even one of us stumbles, we all shall carry the crushing burden. Let us make an unbreakable promise to each other right now. We stand united. We stand together no matter what fate befalls us." Azel moved forward, his eyes flashing brightly with an unexpected conviction. "Whatever happens to one happens to all," he declared. "Let's seal this vow between us, binding our very essence." The 200 angels lifted their hands in unison toward the starlit sky, swearing their eternal loyalty. Together, their voices, normally used for celestial song, rose as one, a powerful, unified declaration. "We are united. We will never abandon each other." Years passed, flowing like the rivers they observed. The Watchers kept their gaze fixed on the unfolding drama of humankind, watching them light their very first fires and singing their earliest, haunting songs under the soft glow of the moon. They watched children laugh with pure, unadulterated joy and saw the quiet, deep love exchanged between husbands and wives. They witnessed mortal life in all its breathtaking beauty and fragile complexity, and something deep inside their eternal, unchanging beings began slowly to awaken. At first, they simply watched from the isolation of their mountain, performing their duty. But the longer they remained observing the intoxicating spectacle, the agonizingly harder it became to maintain their spiritual and physical distance. Samjaza found himself relentlessly watching the daughters of Earth as they gracefully drew life-giving water from the flowing rivers down below. They live with such profound freedom, he thought to himself, a pang of longing unfamiliar to an angel crossing his heart. They answer to nothing except the wild rhythm of their own beating hearts. Azal stood nearby, observing the same scene. They're so fragile, he said softly, a hint of wonder in his voice. Yet, there's a stubborn strength in them, a resilience that utterly refuses to bow, even before the power of heaven itself. Soon, the other angels also started whispering among themselves, their perfect consensus beginning to fray. What started as detached curiosity grew quickly into a consuming longing, and longing, the first fatal step, transformed into something they'd never felt before, burning desire. Samjaza felt an immense, suffocating heaviness pressing against his powerful chest. He turned his face skyward, searching desperately for some resounding voice from above, some cosmic directive that would silence these profane, burgeoning feelings, but only the cold mountain wind answered his silent plea. He looked back down at the world below, a breathtaking tapestry of fleeting life, and a strange, bitter jealousy stirred within him. The watchers were no longer merely detached observers. They had become unwilling witnesses to something they realized, too late, they could not possibly resist. For the first time since the very dawn of creation, heaven's sons experienced the burning, visceral force of human desire. Days blurred into months. Months stretched into years. Yet Samjaza's troubled gaze remained fixed on the world below, still filled with the same quiet wonder, now tainted with lust. Even though they had sworn their eternal oath together on that peak, a crippling doubt still lingered and metastasized in Samjaza's heart. Then finally he shattered the long silence. "Brothers," he said, "we've been watching them for so long now. Their lives are tragically short and brief, yet they burn with a passionate fire we, the eternal ones, have never known. Is it truly so wrong, then, to want to walk among them just for a while?" Iraq, one of the more pragmatic watchers, responded with immediate gravity. "Wanting isn't wrong, Samjaza, but acting on it will condemn us all. Heaven has strictly forbidden this transgression." Samjaza turned slowly toward him, his eyes troubled. "But heaven has been silent, hasn't it? Maybe that silence, that emptiness above us, means consent. Maybe it means permission." Azal stepped closer, his gaze steady and manipulative. "You're afraid of the punishment, Samjaza. You think you'll fall alone, but remember our sacred vow. If one falls, we all fall into the chasm. No one will abandon you to face the judgment alone." Samjaza's eyes drifted back toward the captivating earth. "My only true fear," he admitted, his voice barely audible, "is that by seeking this fleeting love, we will instead bring absolute destruction upon the world we were meant to protect." Arakiel, another watcher, placed his comforting hand heavily on Samjaza's shoulder. "We already made our choice the moment we felt desire, brother. The vow is spoken. Let's descend now and complete what our heart started." The air around them grew thick and heavy, charged with irreversible fate. A profound silence wrapped around the 200 beings. Even the night itself seemed to pause, holding its breath to witness the cosmic betrayal. Then Samjaza raised his face toward the swirling darkness of the sky and whispered a single fateful sentence. "Let it be done." And so the watchers descended once more. But this second descent was radically different from their first pure journey. They plunged through clouds and radiant light, moving not toward assigned posts, but directly toward the earth that had captured their gaze and aggressively stirred their hearts. To mortal human eyes, they appeared as towering, glowing, terrifyingly magnificent beings. The innocent daughters of Earth saw them coming and trembled, partly in awe, partly in fear. Samjaza approached a beautiful woman standing near the riverbank. Starlight, reflected in her deeply human eyes, seemed to pierce his eternal soul. "Don't be afraid," he said gently, his voice a vibration of cosmic power. "I've been watching over you since the day you were born into this light." She trembled violently, barely able to speak. You don't belong to this world. No, he admitted, lowering his gaze slightly. But tonight I choose to enter it. And just like that, the Watchers abandoned their mandate and married the daughters of Earth. They lived openly among them, and for the first time ever, heaven and earth became terrifyingly one. Light merged violently with flesh in a single devastating breath. From these forbidden, unnatural unions came the Nephilim, powerful, restless, and deeply monstrous giants. Their physical strength knew no moral boundaries, and their relentless, primal appetites had no end. They quickly rose up and ruled over humanity like petty, bloodthirsty gods, and the entire world began to tremble beneath their colossal feet. Initially, they consumed the crops from the fields and the animals from the land. But quickly, their hunger, like all forbidden desires, spiraled violently out of control. They turned with terrifying savagery on humanity itself, consuming and devouring the very mortals their fathers were originally sent to protect. Samjaza stood grief-stricken on a hill, watching the fields burn below, the smoke stinging his eyes. He spoke quietly to himself, a broken man. How did we arrive at this catastrophe? He wondered aloud, shattered. We only wanted to guide them, to bring them closer to the light. But is this carnage what we've created? Azel looked at the burning valleys below, his expression cold and calculating. This is just the beginning, Samjaza. There's still so much more knowledge we can teach them. And just like that, the corrupted Watchers began wandering across the world, each one ruthlessly revealing sacred secrets that humans were never meant to possess, unlocking destructive power. Azel went first, embracing his role as the great corrupter. He visited the blacksmiths and spoke to them with insidious charm. Why only shape plows for peaceful farming when you can shape power itself? He showed them precisely how to pull dense, black metal from deep within the earth's crust, how to strike and temper the iron until it became something lethally deadly. Make it sharp? Azel whispered, his cold hand guiding the hammer of a shaking apprentice. A man holding a perfect sword fears no god, only his opponent. Soon, the forges burned brighter and hotter than the sun. Humans learned rapidly to craft shields, spears, and imposing armor. They immediately stopped farming their fields and started obsessively preparing for perpetual war instead. But Azel's poisonous lessons didn't stop with bloodshed. To the women, he brought the dark art of deceptive beauty. He painstakingly ground precious gems into fine, glittering powder, teaching them exactly how to paint their eyes and intricately decorate their bodies to snare the male gaze. Let your face shine brighter than the sunrise, he told them, smiling darkly, and no man will be able to resist your gaze or your will. What started as innocent wonder quickly twisted into devastating vanity. Gold hung heavy from their necks, and mirrors reflected only pride, never shame. Innocent human desire instantly transformed into an insatiable, destructive hunger for status and power. From the remote mountains, Arakiel came down and taught dangerous knowledge about the earth and its hidden forces. He showed how certain roots could heal, how others could lethally poison, and how some could trap the vulnerable mind in deep, inescapable dreams. Every plant has two faces, he explained with philosophical detachment. One gives life and sustains existence. The other takes it ruthlessly away. Barakiel lifted his eyes toward the majestic night sky and carefully traced patterns among the endless stars. These aren't just lights, he told the terrified shepherds. They are signs, messages written by the gods themselves in the cosmos. Learn to read them, and you'll see the inevitable future. Kokabel taught the methodical mapping of star patterns, transforming observation into dark divination. Shamsil revealed the precise, cyclical path of how the sun moves across the sky, turning worship into cold science. Bet-Ariel whispered complex, forbidden magical spells, and Tamil showed humans how to summon restless, chaotic spirits from the wind itself. Everything that had been sacredly forbidden became alarmingly common knowledge. The world gained terrifying wisdom but grew spiritually sick at the exact same time. Villages expanded into crowded cities. Cities grew into warring kingdoms. Kingdoms quickly transformed into vast, bloody battlefields. The Nephilim, immense and brutal, led great armies of men carrying the devastating weapons Azel had given them. The ground never dried because it constantly drank the flowing blood of hunters and kings alike. Samjaza stood on a hill overlooking the grotesque slaughter. Smoke rose thick and black from the plains stretching out below him. His heart, once filled with divine wonder, now felt utterly crushed by the weight of their consequence. "This isn't the world we dreamed of," he whispered, tears in his eyes. "We wanted to share the light, not drown it forever in blood." Azel, standing beside him, smiled faintly, dangerously. "You talk about light as if it's holy, Samjaza," he said dismissively. "Knowledge isn't holy or cursed. It's simply power, and power never stays still. It must be wielded." Samjaza turned toward him, his face etched with pain. "And when that power destroys absolutely everything, what will be left of your precious creation?" Azel's eyes gleamed like hot iron in the firelight. "Then the world will be born again. It must burn first, profoundly, to reveal what survives the refining fire." But even the cold, calculating Azel began sensing the terrifying judgment that was rapidly approaching. The earth itself started shaking violently, groaning as if it could no longer possibly carry the immense, cumulative weight of all this sin. "The ground groans," Arakiel observed, chilled. "It remembers the sacred footsteps of angels and now drinks the blood of their demonic children." Samjaza lifted his face toward the silent, starless heaven. "Do you still see us?" he whispered desperately. "Do you still remember who we used to be, before we broke the oath?" But the vast sky remained utterly silent above the burning world. High above, within the highest celestial realm, the four great archangels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, stood before God's shimmering throne, watching the terrifying chaos unfolding below. Thick smoke rose from the burning valleys, and the agonizing cries of humanity echoed through the silent clouds. The earth, once green and thriving, was tragically drowning in its own blood. Michael, the commander of the heavenly hosts, spoke first. "Lord," he said, his voice filled with sorrow, "the world you created cries out in unendurable agony. The rivers below run red with gore, and human hearts have turned to solid stone, guided by the Watchers." Gabriel, the messenger of strength, stepped forward. "The Watchers have utterly disobeyed your sacred command," he reported. "They walk senselessly among flesh and deceitfully call it love. Their monstrous children devour the living without remorse. If this corruption continues, nothing will remain worth saving." Raphael, the healer, lowered his gaze in profound sadness. "The ground groans under their unholy weight," he said softly. "Even the very wind carries their sickening corruption. Every breath the earth takes has become a desperate curse against the sky." Uriel, the keeper of repentance, raised his hand toward the dark horizon, where the sin was spreading. "If we stay silent, their sin will spread beyond earth," he warned gravely. "Even heaven itself won't remain untouched by their demonic knowledge." The four archangels bowed their heads deeply. They had patiently watched the Watchers twist God's magnificent gift of creation into a bloodbath, and their patience, born of eternity, had finally run out. Yet even as they spoke, a profound fear filled their hearts about the unimaginable fury God's anger might bring. "Lord of all creation," they said together in unison, "the earth is drowning. Your precious children cry out for immediate justice." But the throne, radiating blinding light, remained completely silent. Michael lifted his face again, determined. "Will you not act?" he asked quietly, respectfully, his voice echoing in the celestial silence. "Will you not speak the word that ends this madness?" A deep, unbearable stillness filled heaven, heavier than any sound or thunder. Then, abruptly, a dark, furious wind began rising, swirling through the fields of stars. It moved with purpose, carrying the immense, crushing weight of judgment not yet spoken, a promise of unavoidable wrath. Gabriel felt the chilling shift first. "The wind has shifted," he whispered in awe. "He has heard us." Below, on the blood-soaked earth, the Watchers felt it, too. The air around them suddenly thickened, and the sky darkened ominously above their chaotic cities. Samjaza stood alone at the edge of a destroyed field, his hands stained deeply with dust and human ash. Azul looked toward the horizon and clearly saw the immense storm forming rapidly over the jagged peaks of the mountains. "It's coming," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. Samjaza closed his eyes, accepting the consequence. Then our deepest fears have come tragically true. Among the watchers, whispers of terror spread like wildfire. They had seen, in their millennia of service, what divine anger could do to creation. In that terrifying moment, even the Nephilim, those mighty, godlike sons of angels, grew agitated and restless, sensing the imminent cosmic reckoning. The ground beneath them shook violently, as if the world itself was preparing to heave them out of existence. For the first time since they foolishly descended, they felt what mortals call true despair. Samjaza walked aimlessly through the empty, desolate fields. His eyes, once burning with celestial fire, had become hollowed and defeated. Around him, the remaining watchers stood in profound, terrified silence. "We wanted only to bring them light," Samjaza said, his voice cracking with unbearable shame, "to share what was hidden from them. But now the earth itself cries out against us and our legacy." Azul stood apart, staring coldly at the darkening horizon. "It's not the earth that condemns us," he corrected him. "It's the unbearable silence from above that is our true judge." Samjaza turned sharply toward him, his patience gone. "You still talk as if this wasn't your fault. You taught them the brutal art of war. You put destructive weapons in their hands and insidious pride in their hearts." Azul's cold expression didn't change, unwavering. "And you taught them love," he replied coldly, striking at the core of Samjaza's weakness. "Tell me which of us caused more utter destruction." Samjaza fell silent, utterly defeated. Then one of the watchers dropped to his knees, utterly broken. "We can't bear this darkness," he sobbed. "Heaven has abandoned us completely." Another voice followed, shaking violently with fear. "We must beg for mercy. Maybe if we plead through someone else, he'll listen to us." Samjaza looked toward heaven, watching the clouds swirl like thick, dark water. "We've already prayed," he said bitterly. "We've cried out, but the sky gives no answer that we can hear." Azul shook his head, cynical to the end. "He doesn't listen to fallen creatures." Then Iraq spoke up, a desperate idea forming. "But there's one person who still walks in his favor, a man among men, a righteous one, untouched by our sins." "Who?" Samjaza asked, a flicker of something new in his hollow eyes. "Enoch," Iraq said, "the son of Jared, the one who walks faithfully with God." At the sound of that pure name, the others looked up, hope flickering faintly in their desperate eyes. "Let him speak for us," Iraqiel continued urgently. "He still hears the voice of the Most High. If he pleads on our behalf, perhaps the Lord will remember what mercy truly means." Samjaza hesitated. The thought of kneeling before a man made from fragile dust felt agonizingly unbearable, the final humiliation. But if they did nothing, their eternal fate was undeniably sealed. "Let it be done," he said finally, swallowing his pride. "Let Enoch become our voice, our final petition." That night, Enoch, the righteous prophet, walked alone and unafraid through the valley. His hair was white as moonlight, radiating spiritual purity. He had heard the distant cries of the watchers in the spirit before they even spoke them aloud on earth. When he reached the bottom of Mount Hermon, the watchers descended quickly to meet him. Their enormous wings cast monstrous shadows across the earth, and even the mountains seemed to tremble under their overwhelming, fallen presence. But Enoch showed no physical fear, only profound pity. Samjaza, the great leader, stepped forward and humbly bowed his massive head. "Man of God," he said quietly, his voice broken, "we have sinned against the highest command." Enoch looked at him steadily, waiting. "We were sent to guide them," Samjaza continued, the words painful to utter, "to protect, not to rule. But we were tempted by their beauty and their brief, intense lives. We married among them, and now our children have brought utter destruction upon the earth. Tell him we're profoundly sorry." Tell him we want to be forgiven for our error. Azel spoke last, his words tinged with defiance, even in defeat. If justice exists, then mercy must exist too, he said. We're not asking for the glory of heaven, only for peace from this torment. Enoch looked at them for a long, heavy moment, judging their hearts. Then he spoke, his mortal voice echoing with clarity. You want me, a man of dust, to plead with the Almighty for your fallen race? Yes, Samjaza said quickly. Go before him. Speak our names clearly. Beg him to remember that once, long ago, we were his faithful sons. Enoch nodded slowly, accepting the impossible charge. I'll go, but I make no promises about what he'll say or what mercy he might grant. Enoch was immediately taken up in spirit to the higher realms. The brilliant stars fell away behind him, and he came, breathless, before the throne of the Most High. The light was utterly blinding, and the ground beneath him shook with incomprehensible power. He fell instantly on his face and spoke in awe. Lord of heaven, the watchers have sent me, your humble servant. They beg for mercy. Their hearts are broken, and their children have gone mad with power. They're not asking to return to glory, only for forgiveness for their crime. For a moment, everything in heaven was deathly still. Then the terrifying, seismic voice of the Lord filled heaven like an approaching storm. Enoch, righteous son of man, hear my words. These watchers were not created to mingle their spirit with flesh. They have fundamentally corrupted my pristine creation and shared sacred secrets that were never, ever meant for mortal hands to possess. You will tell them this verdict. You belonged in heaven, but now you belong permanently to the earth you desired. Enoch bowed his head, accepting the judgment. Then the Lord spoke again, the voice vibrating with finality. They asked me to forgive them, but listen closely. It's not their place to pray for humanity, nor is it humanity's place to pray for them. You will tell them, you weren't appointed to intercede for mankind, but rather mankind was appointed to intercede for you. Heaven shook violently with the gravity of the declaration. Then the voice continued, detailing the sentence. Tell Samjaza and his companions that their children, the giants of earth, will be consumed and will die by their own fratricidal hands. The earth will be utterly cleansed by flood and by fire. As for the watchers, bind them immediately in valleys of absolute darkness beneath the mountains of earth, secured by chains, until the appointed day of final judgment. When Enoch returned to the valley, the watchers were waiting in terrified anticipation. Their faces were desperate for a single word of hope. But Enoch's expression was grave and utterly serious. Samjaza stepped forward, sensing doom. What did he say? Enoch's voice was steady and emotionless, delivering the decree. He has spoken. Your children will be destroyed by their own rage. You, the watchers, will be bound securely in the earth until the final day. There will be no mercy. The watchers fell silent, a crushing despair settling over them. Some wept openly, massive tears falling onto the ruined ground. Others stood frozen in disbelief and horror. Azel clenched his mighty fists, unable to accept the end. So even repentance means nothing to the Creator? Enoch looked at him with pity. You knew the sacred command. You chose willingly to break it. You taught humanity what they weren't meant to know, the art of murder. You gave them pride. And in that pride, they will destroy themselves, just as you taught them. This isn't just punishment from above. It's the unavoidable consequence of your actions. Samjaza sank to his knees, utterly defeated. Then it's over. Yes, Enoch said softly. The flood will come, and with it, the absolute end of everything you built and cherished. He turned to leave but paused once more, a final, sorrowful message to impart. You wanted to walk among them, he said quietly, looking back at the kneeling giants. Now you'll lie beneath them in the darkness. Enoch's figure faded into the mist, leaving the fallen angels alone with their irreversible fate. Samjaza bowed his head, his voice barely a whisper, accepting the tragedy. We sought love, he said, and found damnation. Beside him, Azel stared intensely into the darkening sky, his defiance unbroken. Perhaps, he said, He'll still need us when the world begins again. The silence that followed Enoch's message of doom didn't last long. From beyond the shimmering veil of light, four great archangels descended with terrifying speed. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, each one carrying the swift, unyielding command of the Almighty. The skies split open with deafening thunder as they arrived. They weren't coming as messengers now, but as cold, perfect instruments of divine justice. Below them the world lay in ruins. The Nephilim roamed the valleys, towering above the tallest trees, their furious roars shaking the mountains to their core. The Watchers stood helpless and paralyzed as the earth itself seemed to rise against them, demanding their imprisonment. Michael's commanding voice broke the silence. "It's time." Raphael, the former healer, moved first. He descended quickly into the scorching heart of the desert where Azel wandered among the wreckage of his corrupt creation. Around the defiant angel lay the broken tools of war, shattered blades, pieces of rusted armor, and the ashes of countless men. Azel looked up, recognizing his captor. "So the healer comes to bind the teacher," he said, a faint, chilling smile on his lips. But Raphael's reply was calm, cold, and final. "You've taught enough poison." With a single, effortless motion, he struck the ground with his palm, and chains of living, blinding light burst forth from the sand, wrapping tightly around Azel's massive arms and powerful wings. The angel struggled violently against the mystical restraint, but the chains only tightened further, burning his immortal flesh. Raphael lifted him effortlessly high above the scarred earth, and then hurled him brutally into the desert of Judiel, a barren place of perpetual stone and suffocating darkness. "Here you'll remain," Raphael declared, "secured by the light you betrayed, until the final fire consumes all impurity and the ultimate judgment is rendered." The ground opened beneath Azel, swallowing him and the blinding chains completely. Far from there, Gabriel, the hand of God's strength, stood poised on a vast battlefield, where the Nephilim raged and fought endlessly. Gabriel raised his hand toward heaven, issuing a terrible decree. "Let the destroyers destroy themselves," he declared to the wind. At his command, an irrational, blinding madness instantly filled the hearts of the giant Nephilim. Brother turned viciously against brother, father against son, friend against friend. The agonizing cries of the Nephilim filled the air until none were left standing to cry out. High above, Michael descended gently to the mountains where Samjaza and the remaining Watchers had fearfully gathered. Samjaza lifted his face to the sky, ready for his fate. "Do what you must," he said quietly. "We won't resist the judgment." Michael's gaze softened momentarily, for he had once called Samjaza brother. "You were created to guard creation," he said, his voice heavy with sorrow. Quietly, seeking only to uphold the divine order, not to seize dominion. Then, with a gesture as silent as the grave, Michael stretched forth his hand. From the zenith of the heavens, searing, incandescent chains of flame plummeted, wrapping around Siamaza and every angel who had dared to follow his treasonous path. The light of the Empyrean suddenly vanished, replaced by the raw, consuming fire of judgment. The very ground beneath their feet convulsed and tore open, revealing an unfathomable, screaming chasm. "Tartarus," Michael's voice boomed, resonating across the void. "The shadow beneath the world, the deepest pit of forgotten things. There you shall endure, shackled and powerless, until the final dawn of the great reckoning." The newly bound angels, realizing the finality of their fate, shrieked in despair and defiance as the glorious light of creation above them began to dim and finally extinguish. Massive, primordial stone groaned into place, closing over their prison, sealing the rebels within a tomb of absolute, suffocating darkness. The violence of their fall subsided, and the earth fell silent again, holding its breath. Then the ineffable, thunderous voice of God, the Ancient of Days, reverberated across the entirety of heaven and earth. "The pristine earth is utterly defiled by the unnatural, giant offspring of those who fell," he declared, the resonance shaking the pillars of the universe. "Let the torrential waters rise up and surge forth, utterly cleansing the corruption, washing away the stain of disobedience that covers the land. And with that single, irrevocable command, the very skies tore asunder. Rain did not descend in measurable drops, but in colossal, continuous sheets, in roaring cataracts that merged with the bursting fountains of the great deep below. It was a deluge, a furious flood that instantaneously swallowed the deepest valleys and submerged the highest mountain peaks. The raging seas climbed skyward to embrace the low-hanging clouds. Every corner of the globe was utterly drowned beneath the inexorable judgment of heaven. The colossal bodies of the Nephilim, along with the arrogant, towering cities they had engineered in their rebellion, dissolved and vanished beneath the crushing, churning waves. And only then, when the divine purpose was fulfilled, did the immense volume of water finally begin to recede and diminish. The sun, long hidden, finally broke through the thinning canopy of clouds, casting pale, weak light upon a desolate scene. The world lay quiet, scrubbed clean, emptied of wickedness, yet inherently alive. Deep beneath the newly washed soil, in echoing caverns of profound and impenetrable darkness, the watchers, though immortal, languished. They waited, eternally bound by the iron will of the Almighty. They were granted no escape through death, yet they were eternally deprived of the sight of the light, the glory they once knew. Their despairing voices were muffled by rock and lost entirely to the silence of the ages. Yet the tragic influence of the rebels did not cease entirely. Their monstrous offspring, the spirits of the giants, the Nephilim, violently torn from their physical bodies by the sheer force of the flood, were left without form, cursed to wander the desolate, water-scarred world as restless, malicious entities. The earth had been decisively cleansed of fleshly corruption, but heaven itself bore the scars of treason. It no longer shone with the untarnished brilliance it once possessed. And so, in the celestial records, it was inscribed for all time. Thus fell the sons of heaven, the stellar lights extinguished by their own craving. In their self-centered search for a misguided, selfish kind of love, the watchers unearthed only ruin and eternal death. This ancient, terrifying narrative stands as a perpetual reminder that even the highest, most powerful celestial beings can suffer the deepest fall when they deliberately step outside the boundary of God's sovereign will. The watchers were endowed with immense glory and had every blessing, yet their insatiable greed made them covet what was explicitly forbidden. Their profound tragedy imparts a crucial lesson. True obedience is not a set of suffocating restrictions, but a vital act of protective alignment. God's boundaries are not harsh walls built to exclude us from true joy and abundant life. They are, rather, essential guardrails erected to steer us away from catastrophic, self-inflicted destruction. As you bravely navigate your own personal faith journey, constantly hold fast to the understanding that every command, every divine direction from God, springs forth from perfect, unconditional love, never from mere controlling imposition. If this powerful account resonated deep within you, and you feel the call to continue discovering more profound biblical truths alongside us, we encourage you to immediately hit that like button and subscribe to the Bible Breakdown Hub community. Together, we commit to keeping the light on, exploring Scripture's most profound and deepest mysteries, and growing exponentially stronger in our shared faith.